Guys, this is Kyle here with Modern Warrior Systems. I just did a Glock 34 Gen 4 that I wanted to do an overview for you guys and talk about the modifications that were done and specifically some modifications and how we're a little different and how we do them a little different. So this is a Glock 34 Gen 4. We did our full wrap frame package with the full tang layout, border layout. So we texture the tang, but if you like, we can come down here and we leave the tang smooth and we polish that and taper it and heighten it. We do that anyways, but you would just see where it's polished and smooth instead of having texture there. So we did that. We did what we call the hump enhancement. This is modeled after a modification Foresight started called the Razorback. And it's supposed to kind of model after Browning High Power. I always compare it to the Browning High Power or like a VP9 that has the palm swell. But what it does is when you're gripping the gun, it fits right in the palm of your hand, kind of like a ball and socket fit, and it just seems somehow to really lock the pistol into your grip. It almost does it even without texture. It locks it into your grip, and I always had problems milking my grip. I'd shoot a few rounds and then milk and then shoot, and this has completely fixed that. I did a mild grip reduction. I didn't do a too aggressive one because this kind of achieves what a grip reduction is supposed to. This kind of pushes the gun away from your hand a little bit and drops that front sight to get that like flat presentation. But I did do a mild grip reduction. As you can see, it's a little bit flatter here and this is smaller. And then you can see how I've contoured it and ramped it so that it's like a funnel, a curved funnel. So even if you hit here, you're still getting funneled into the mag well. And then you can also see through there that I maintained the lanyard hole if you're going to run it on duty and run a lanyard. And then I bring the border around as well. Let's come with the light here. You can see we bring the border around as well, so you're just getting maximum strength around that hole if you choose to run a lanyard on duty. Coming farther down, you can see we have the magwell cutouts. This is if you get a stuck magazine. It gives you somewhere to place your fingers and just strip that magazine out of there pretty easy. I like these square cuts because it just gives I just think it looks nicer and it gives a little larger area to get into rather than a circular cut. Moving back up the gun, we got rid of the finger grooves. I just find when you do all the work up here with the undercuts and everything, getting those finger grooves out of the way is the best option, because if you are getting higher in your grip, then maybe those finger grooves don't line up as well as they used to. So we just try and recommend to get them out of the way to make all this more functional, more comfortable as well. Something that comes standard on all our frame packages when you do an undercut, we integrate the magazine release button in with the undercut, so you can see the bottom corner is rounded and polished, so that way when your finger comes around to grip it, that for guys with bigger hands, sometimes that corner can rub a spot right there along with the corners of regular Glock knuckle. So that's one thing we do that I don't think I've seen anyone else do, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are a couple other places doing something like that. So you have the primary undercut, we call it, and then we have your support hand undercut, which is the notch to index that support hand there. We like to put ours a little farther forward It just seems like a more natural place for your hand to fall, and we follow the curvature of the trigger guard. So we found that curving it a little bit and letting it follow that front curvature of the trigger guard just makes it a little more comfortable. Some of the ones that run along the entire bottom of the trigger guard and are very flat, um, that support, it just creates a corner here, and your finger sitting in that flat spot just kind of rides on that corner a little bit and can get a little uncomfortable. We texture the underside of the trigger guard, which is included on all of ours, and it is bordered. Next, you can see our glove bevel. We create more area inside of the trigger guard here in the front and up top to make a larger area for people with bigger hands and wearing gloves. And also, we bevel at an angle this corner here. Lots of guys, when they're pulling the trigger, their trigger finger is running down this corner of the frame here. So we just bevel that and angle it and get it out of the way so that when you're on the gun and your finger's pressing the trigger, your finger is only pressing the trigger. All you can feel on your trigger finger is the trigger shoe itself. You don't feel the frame or hitting the trigger guard or anything. It's just your finger on the trigger, which gets you more clean, consistent trigger pulls and follow-up shots. Another thing we do, we like to run our border around where the magazine release button is. Since there's pressure getting put there quite a bit, I like to keep as much polymer there as possible just because it's a high stress area, and just keep as much strength there as possible. Also, it does help to, in dark environments, your thumb can feel that the texture has stopped, and you're getting like an indicator that you're near the magazine release button because you don't feel any texture there anymore. So you can see our nice recessed edge we do around everything. We bring it all the way under the tang, which is a difficult spot to do, and we bring it around the front here as well. Going back to the grip reduction, I know we used to do this. I know some other shops do this. We would actually cut this entire portion off the frame. We would cut it, remove it. We'd take material from both sides, and then we'd reapply it by melting it and then putting the epoxy. And we use now a metal infused epoxy that's much harder and much easier to work with. But when you reheat and melt polymer that many times, it just risks delamination and peeling, no matter how good you are. You have to go through the entire thickness of the polymer, which is hard because you're working in the back channel. So it's hard to get inside the back channel to make sure you have completely melted it together all the way through the thickness of the polymer. So now what we do for our grip reductions is we cut a line down the center here, and we remove material out of that center line, and then we heat this up and we close it. And I call it like closing the barn door. So I cut here and I cut here like a little T shape, so it makes like two doors. And then I take material out of that center area, and then I heat it up and I close those barn doors and let it cool and set. And melt this back together and then put my epoxy in, and that just creates a much stronger frame that hasn't been completely cut apart. You have all this on the sides that was never cut apart. It was never melted and integrated back together. It's all been part of the frame. You have a nice look and can run your border all the way around the back, even with the grip reduction. So I truly believe doing it that way, and I've never seen anyone do it else that way. I do believe we are superior in doing our grip reductions that way. And the last thing I'll go over is the index points. You can see we offer index points here for your trigger finger just as an index point. It's a good reference point to always be touching it for good trigger discipline. And then on the other side for your thumb, if you're touching that piece of texture, you got a good consistent grip every time. If you look from the side, the top, you don't see any texture sticking out because we recess it below the surface of the frame. And that way, if you're training and you're constantly drawing, if that texture is above the surface, it's getting rubbed by your holster every time you're drawing out of the holster. So we put it below the surface, one, because it's actually an added tactile feel for your finger to feel a little cup to reference along with the texture, but then it protects the texture from being rubbed in your holster every time you draw. So, and last but not least, the actual texture. We offer one texture because it works well. Duty, competition, carry. I went through a lot of different textures trying to decide what texture I wanted, and I finally settled on this one because the polymer bloom, the actual raised part that creates the pattern, it's thick enough to have very, very good durability, and the pattern is also large enough that your skin sinks into those little holes of the pattern and really fills up, and you get a very positive purchase on the firearm. But the actual surface itself is not sharp. The polymer bloom itself is not sharp. It's your skin sinking into that pattern where you get your very good purchase on the gun. So you get a very good tactile grip because of this pattern, but it also doesn't chafe you and rub your skin raw or tear up your clothing either. And it's also deep enough pattern to where if it gets dropped in mud or anything, it channels it away from the surface and you're still getting a good tactile purchase on the firearm. And we do like a heat treatment on it afterwards that hardens the surface even more to get even more durability out of it, and we guarantee the texture. So if you have any areas that are wearing down, you send it back to us, and we retexture the entire frame at no charge. Even if you get one little wear spot, right here or wherever, or maybe here where your fingers are sitting, even if you just have one little wear spot, we're just going to go ahead and retexture the whole thing for you at no charge to you. So I will just kind of let you guys see what this thing looks like. It looks really great. You can see the borders there. You can see how nicely polished everything is. It's a good shot right there. You can see, and you can really see the texture. There's the combat cuts or magwell cuts. And I'll let you guys see the bottom of the trigger guard one more time. And that is it for the frame package on this Glock 34. Thanks for listening, guys.